Is Tyler Herro a fraud? Tyler Herro is certainly an interesting player on NBA Twitter and other places. Potentially the most polarizing or one of the most polarizing young players in the league. I made a video earlier in the season talking about how he is one of the most overrated, if not the most overrated young player in the entire league now, and that was at the time that the Harden rumors were swirling and Heat fans didn't want to trade Tyler Herro for James Harden. We're going to get into all of that in today's video. But really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload every single day in this channel. It's the most consistent NBA content on YouTube. Leave a like rating if you're enjoying it. Helps get the video out to more people. And there's a social link in the description below if you guys want to hang out with me outside of these videos. With those things said, let's talk about Tyler Herro. So first, slight defense of Tyler Herro here, okay? I think that pretty often we have difficulties as fans swinging way too far one way or the other on particular players in terms of overrated or underrated. It's happened to me a ton of times, right? Where you're so harsh on one player that you go too far one way or too far the other, right? And we've kind of already done that 2 or 3 times with Tyler Herro. We went from, oh, this guy's an interesting rookie, to great performances in the postseason, to this year not being great, and somewhere mixed in there, him being more valuable than James Harden as an individual asset somehow, right? Okay. Slight defense here. You don't have some of the playoff performances that Tyler Herro did and be as valuable to a team that made the finals as Tyler Herro was last postseason, despite the circumstances of that postseason, without being a decent NBA player. Tyler Herro's not bad, okay? Let's just be clear. Tyler Herro's not a bad NBA player. He's in his second season, and as a rookie, he provided incredible value at certain points in the postseason. Now, was it just a hot shooting stretch? Was it something he's never going to be able to replicate? I don't know, but I saw it with my own eyes, and I know that Tyler Herro is, worst case, a good NBA player. And that was the case that I made in that overrated video that I did a couple of months ago, right? Now, my issue at the time then was that somehow we went from good NBA player, good young guy as a rookie, to, hey, I'm not sure if we want to give up Tyler Herro and some picks in exchange for James Harden. Like, that was my issue there. It was like, clearly, a guy that's been a top MVP candidate for multiple years. You can disagree with his style. You can talk about the fact that everything was built around him. You can talk about the D'Antoni effect, all that stuff, right? But if you put James Harden, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo together in Miami, that's a championship contending team, right? And they're not a championship contending team if you just substitute that for Tyler Herro and some future picks, okay? That was my biggest issue. I really didn't even talk a ton about Tyler Herro's play on the court in that video. It was just about this disillusioned idea that his value had increased to the point where he was off the table in James Harden trades, right? I think now we're clearly on the same page that Tyler Herro is a good, interesting young player. But for his performances this season specifically, people are kind of upset because they built him up in their head. They saw what he did in the postseason. They were like, wow, this guy is going to be like a 20-point per game scorer for years and years to come. Look at this fantastic asset that we have. It's really put us in a good position moving forward, especially considering this is a guy that got picked outside of the top 10. And I'm not saying you're wrong. Like, there's good qualities here. This is a guy that can shoot. Confidence level is certainly not an issue, okay? They allowed him to do some stuff, especially once Dragic got hurt in the postseason, in the finals, where he was doing like a relatively large amount of the creation and working out of dribble handoffs and stuff, and was a really good fit within that offense. And it wasn't just he's shooting well in the corner, but like he fit in well with what Miami wanted to do, which is one of the more structured offenses in the league, a team that likes to do a lot of dribble handoff stuff and is a little bit atypical amongst NBA offenses that for the most part just kind of spread things out. There's a lot more happening there in Miami, a lot more movement, and he fit in really well in that, especially considering that he was just a rookie, right? However, I think there's a couple of pretty obvious reasons for why Tyler Herro isn't playing the way people thought that he would this season. First of all, he was pretty decent at the beginning of the year, and since, his shooting struggles are pretty well documented, right? He's not shooting the basketball well, and for a player like him that hasn't had the opportunity to really develop a ton of their other skills, if he's not making outside shots, it's going to be difficult for him to score efficiently. It's going to be difficult for him to get to the rim. It's going to be difficult for him to do all the things that he needs to do offensively, and defensively, he's not going to provide a ton of value either, okay? But can we also consider for a moment that this is a guy that barely spent any time in college, is in his second year in the NBA, played a ton of minutes for a team that made the finals, was one of the big reasons why this team played as well as they did in the second half of the year, regular year, and then going into the postseason, because he started to get more minutes after they made the Iguodala trade. And they had the shortest turnaround of any other team in the league, them and the Lakers, right? I think that's something that we need to consider, despite the fact that this guy is young, right? And same thing with Duncan Robinson, still is a younger player who's also struggled at points this season for Miami. This Miami team is kind of mirrored exactly what Tyler Herro's careers look like to this point, where like they were this huge surprise in the postseason, everybody loved them, and then this year they just haven't been able to find their footing. And I'm not saying that's all blamed on the fact they had this really quick turnaround, but I also don't think it's fair to just completely ignore that aspect of this story. I mean, literally the quickest turnaround of any other team in the league, them and the Lakers combined. And when you're a young player like Tyler Herro, you can't really overvalue how much it would mean for him to get another NBA training camp in, you know what I mean? And run some with these guys and really get an opportunity to work out and develop his skills. It's been well reported that pretty much every player in the league thought that the season was going to start in February, in January at the earliest, and then suddenly, prior to Christmas, they were playing games. It was a very quick turnaround for everybody, but none more so than the Heat and for Tyler Herro. And I'm not trying to just explain it away. He's not playing well. He's not playing up to the expectations I'm sure that he had for himself. I'm sure that the Heat had for him, and certainly that fans have had for him this season. But I also don't want to make it a thing where we're all just suddenly piling on to Tyler Herro now that he's not playing well or because we had too high of expectations, right? I think there's a lot of different things kind of coming together here that you can point to and say, hey, this is why Tyler Herro isn't as good. This is why he isn't as good. And I don't think that calling him a fraud is really the right terminology. And the reason I used it is because it's something that I have seen a lot floating around at the moment where people are calling this guy a fraud. You can't have the postseason success that he did by accident. You can't be as impressive as a rookie, as a shot creator as he was by accident, in my own personal opinion, okay? Ultimately, the long-term outlook for Tyler Herro is probably a player that might become an all-star, might not. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Is going to be a pretty valuable trade asset still going into this offseason. If the Heat do look to move him. And ultimately is a guy that I would not be surprised if he has a really good third season in Miami or elsewhere once he has a real normal offseason to be able to go to training camp, be able to work on his game all summer, to not have a 2.5 month turnaround between playing in the finals and then playing the next season, right? I don't want to make too many excuses for the guy. I don't want to make it seem like Miami and the Lakers should have gotten a handicap for having as quick a turnaround as they did. But I also think that it's worth pointing out that these teams came back faster than any other teams in the league, and they have been struggling, for the Lakers at least, for the second half of the year, and for the Heat pretty much the entire year. They've had some of the higher injury rates, certainly to significant players, of any team in the league, and those things need to be accounted for, and I think all those things extend to Tyler Herro. What I'm interested in is what you guys have to say in the comment section about where you're at with Tyler Herro. Do you think that this is a guy that's going to be, a real surprise next year? He's going to come back and he's going to bounce back. He's going to find his shot, and he's going to go back to being a guy that could challenge to score 20 points a game for the next, handful of years going into his prime? Or are you on the side that thinks he's a fraud, that think he's someone that got completely overrated, that we put way too much stock into, that we kind of fell in love with the style in which he plays and kind of the bravado that he brings to the court and some of the big moments that he had in the finals? We put way too much stock into that without recognizing that it could have just been a hot streak from a guy that has a lot of confidence, and that confidence does not serve him as well when he's not making shots. For me personally, it's kind of a combination of all the things that I just said. I think we did certainly overrate Tyler Herro, not only in that postseason, but that again, not we, but there's some people, I would say, potentially fans of the Heat, overvalued him when it came to the James Harden trade situation. And it's all come together to where now we went from like, oh, Tyler Herro's really underrated, look how good this guy is. And now we've all swung to like, oh, Tyler Herro's overrated, he's so bad. And he's kind of somewhere in the middle, and he's always kind of been there, okay? So ultimately, not only does this relate to Tyler Herro, but I would use this approach generally for most players in the league as well, is to kind of think of them in not so polarizing terms, I guess is the best way to phrase it. Like, it's okay to be a good player and be properly rated. You know what I mean? We don't have to all jump on them and say, oh my gosh, this guy's so underrated. And then when they start playing poorly, oh no, everybody, overrated this guy. Now he's off. Okay. That's where I'm at on Tyler Herro. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say down in the comments section below. With all those things said, hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day. If you enjoy the content, consider subscribing. There's boxes on the screen right here that you can check out. And you can also leave a like rating on the video as well if you enjoyed it. Check out the various socials and link down in the description below as well if you want to hang out with me outside of these videos. And yeah, with all those things said, hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.